You don't have to be like the shiniest, most seasoned leader to do that. But Lau and I always say it, you have to be dependent upon God.
Hey guys, welcome back to At the Table with Jess. I'm super excited for our episode this week. We are here with my pastor's wife. So we always have all of these different guests that are coming from all around the world doing all of this different stuff. But today you get to hear from someone that I personally am positioned under, learning from, honoring her husband Lyle and Allyson. They both pastor Legacy Church. I love my church. Like, I really love our church. I'm so excited. It's been such a gift to me, to our community, to everybody. And we're about to launch a new campus, which I'm really excited about, which is closer to where I live. And so many good things happening at Legacy.
So many good things.
We're so, and you know what's really fun for me too is like when I moved back to Franklin, I walked in and I saw all these people that have been part of different seasons of my life. And it was like, how did you get here? And they're like, the Lord sent me here. How'd you get here? The Lord sent me here. I'm like, this is amazing.
That's how you know you're home.
Super fun. Yeah, it feels like a big family reunion every Sunday, which is super fun. So,
that's so amazing.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you for
having me.
How are you? Oh, I'm so great. They don't know, but it was pouring rain.
I was about to say, you got rained on walking in. So.
But maybe it's prophetic. I don't know.
She has endured the elements to be here with us today, which is
such an honor.
And multiple kiddos and life going on.
Yep.
How many kids you got?
I've got 3 and 1 on the way.
What are the ages?
So we've got a 10, an 8, a 5, and then I'll have a newborn in the fall time. So, just right. I was texting my sister today. Like, how silly of me, to be in that parenting phase where everything gets a little easy again. And then, hey, let's just start over. Let's just have one more,
over again. Yeah.
But we love it. We're so grateful. Yeah.
Doing that and pastoring a thriving church. You just launched a new women's ministry, which we're going to talk about. And so life is full for you.
Yeah. It's full.
That is...
Yeah.
Did you ever, like, as a little girl, were you like, this is what I dreamed to be doing one day? Like...
Oh, man. I think in some ways, absolutely. Without a doubt. I know that there's a lot of people who feel like they got into ministry kind of like a Jesus juke, like the Lord kind of, thought I was going to go one direction. And then, he pulled me into another. But I always knew from a really, really small age that I wanted to do something in ministry. I don't know if I imagined this,
Yeah, sure.
I don't know, but I love it with everything that's in me. I knew that I would give my life to people. I just love people. I think people are brilliant. I think they're complicated and, crazy, but they're also really, really fun. And they teach you so much about, who you are, but who the Lord is. And so I always knew I'd work with people. I thought maybe it would be more in alignment with like missions or something like that. Maybe not so much pastoring a local church, although I always loved the local church. So it's a both and situation. I always knew that I'd be in some form of ministry, but I don't know if I thought it would look like this.
I had this moment actually like a few weeks ago at church, or maybe a couple months ago, but I looked up and I saw you holding Katie's baby, and Katie's there, and then your dad was there, and I sat there and I'm like, they did something right.
Yeah.
Just your parents and I've known Katie a little bit longer than you, just from running together at Bethel, and just looked and I'm like, wow. So what do you think that is? Because both of you are in ministry. You love Jesus.
Yeah.
You're getting to do this as a family, which I think is stunning.
I love that question because I think it's such an important one.
Yeah.
When you see faith passed generation to generation to generation, it's something to pay attention to, in my opinion, especially looking at the landscape of culture today and so many people struggling with their faith and their walk with the Lord. And I think that my parents just lived their faith out loud. So that was a big thing. So faith was never a segmented part of their life. Their faith was the entirety of their life. It wasn't like, hey, we have a Sunday faith and then we have a Monday job life, a Tuesday job life. Our love for the Lord was, permeated every part of our home. So I think that was really important. 2, my parents didn't pretend. So I think that was a big deal for at least my siblings and I. My parents weren't one people at church and then another set of people at home. And so I think there was a lot of congruency for us in regards to how they lived their faith and who they really were. So it made it easy for us to say, hey, like, we want to incorporate that reality into our life. Jesus doesn't just make my life better. We don't have life without Jesus. There were so many times in my life growing up that my parents made space for the miraculous to happen instead of freaking out like, hey, the bills can't get paid this month, or maybe something's not going the way that we thought it would. They always opened up an opportunity to see God move and invited us into it. And so when the Lord inevitably showed up and moved in miraculous ways, we got to be a part of that.
Right.
So I think that was important for us.
Yeah, that's amazing. And they weren't in ministry, right? So they were just, wow.
Yeah, they worked. Both of my parents are the hardest working people that I know. And my dad's retired, but my mom still works because that's just her personality.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yes, she still works full time and she loves it. But they just always made it such a priority to show us that, hey, Jesus is real, and let us live our real life in God in front of you. And there was no segmenting between the two things.
Wow. I love that. It's always fun to watch because your mom too, she just makes her way through the crowd, hugging everybody, loving on everybody, praying for people if they need it. I'm like, you're pastoring this church as much as everybody else.
Oh,
just
people don't realize
loving,
how much like a smile and a hug and like a word of encouragement will literally minister to the heart of a person. So much deeper than, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to preach, I'm going to architect these beautiful services and these opportunities for people to be ministered to. And it's like, but you can never downplay what it means to actually be a member of a local church and live your faith in your local church. Loving people, sitting next to somebody, giving them a word of encouragement, loving on them. And so, I mean, it's just so important. That's what she's always done. And man, she dances circles around me.
I would say she does it so well.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's so important too. Like, I want to get into how you guys launched Legacy, but I mean, pastors need members of churches that do that. Like, if you're watching 100%. This and you're like, I'm trying to be useful, great. Like, go love on people in the congregation.
And that's what I feel like you do so well as a part of our community is you take so much responsibility for the people that the Lord puts in your pathway. One, obviously you said it from the beginning. Hey, felt like I came home to like a family reunion. There were so many people here that I already knew, but it's so often that I hear, oh, Jess spoke a word over me. Oh, she encouraged me. And that it makes such a difference because a church isn't a church without life-giving members ministering to one another, because I can only do so much. I'm one person, 4 kids, a dog, a husband, and so there's a measure of ministry I can do. But ultimately my job is to make sure that everybody who's a part of my church and the people that the Lord puts in my path are equipped to actually do that thing in their everyday life.
Yeah. And people are doing it well in our community, which is so fun to see. I remember when I got saved, I was first on staff at this tiny little church in the middle of nowhere, Texas, right?
Praise God.
Those are the moments that just form you, But I remember there was this one lady in the church. She was in her 80s. Her name was Ma Shaw. Everybody called her Ma Shaw. And I think every person in the church had received a card with some sort of word of encouragement from Ma Shaw at some point. And as a young 18-year-old, I just remember going like, you're making a huge difference in the church.
Absolutely.
Like the amount of times people are like, I got a card from Ma Shaw on the hardest day or this or that. And so it's just part of all of us being a part of the body of Christ, being a part of the family. And it's so fun to get to be a part of that with Legacy.
Oh, so I love that.
I've heard some of the story. I don't think I know all of it. But first off, how long have you and Lyle been married?
We've been married. We just celebrated 12 years.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I feel like you crest over a milestone when you survive 10 years of marriage. You're like, okay, we're really doing this thing. Yeah. And I feel like the first 10 years was learning. And now we're in a phase of like getting to enjoy the foundation that we built in our marriage. And that's really fun and exciting.
That's
all
cool.
while building a church and a family. And
running 1,000 miles an hour. Where did you guys meet?
So we actually met in Nashville. So Lyle, I don't know how much of, I'm sure you know a lot of his story, but he was a missionary with Iris Global for about 4 or 5 years before we met. So when we met, he was launching a missions base in Nashville.
Oh yeah.
And they were just kind of hosting some like worship gatherings, some worship nights for their friends, just to kind of give people a taste of the Iris culture. And so some of my friends started going. I wasn't even living in Nashville at the time. I was living in California. So they were like, you should come to this, gathering. And, we met there and the rest is history.
Come on. That's awesome. So how many years from that point? Because I did know that Legacy was originally, the idea was Iris Nashville, which, So I ran with Iris for years. Love those guys. But Iris DNA and then planting a church in Nashville. I mean, that is two different worlds going on.
Different worlds.
When did you guys make the decision to go, okay, no, this isn't really a missions base. This is a church. This is something different.
Yeah, I think we kind of came to that conclusion when we recognized how much discipleship is required. When we were young, I would never suggest anybody plant a church the way we planted a church. Awesome. First of all, I would never suggest anybody do it as young as we did it.
How old were you guys?
I was 23.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Lyle was probably 28, 27. Wow. He had started Iris even before then, so he was probably 27. So we were just so young, and I definitely have thoughts and opinions about that now, of just the validity of doing that in that phase of your life. Yeah. But there was grace for it, and maybe just enough stupidity that we could, endure that season. So I think once we crested through probably the first 2 or 3 years of doing it as Iris Nashville, we recognized, hey, as much as we love the idea of building a missions base, what these people really need is a local church.
Yeah.
So it was almost like the people who the Lord was bringing to us kind of determined the framework of what we were going to build.
Sure, yeah.
Because I think for a long time we were had these young buck ideas of hey, this is what ministry is going to look like. This is what missions is going to look like. And then my heart started breaking for the people who were coming, and they're not going to the mission field. They have small kids and they're living in Nashville, but they want to know God. Yeah. And they want to know him for real in their real life. And so we were like, man, these people have real lives, real messes, and they need real discipleship. So it was probably about year 2, 3 into it that we recognized, we're going to plant a church.
Wow.
We're going to do this.
An accidental birth.
100%. That's a great way to say it.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think some of the beauty to me of the restoration of that story is that now there is an Iris base in Franklin, and it's the Lord came and did that. And did it differently, and Legacy's been birthed, and both of those are thriving. Doing the thing they're called to do.
It's almost like the Lord always wanted them to exist in Nashville.
Yeah.
But I don't think Lyle would have gotten to the place of local church pastor had he not gone through the avenue of missions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I think it was just the heart of the Lord, and Iris is such a great organization to birth a heart for people, genuine heart for people. Yeah. He just had to go that pathway,
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. Early days, we had some mutual friends, Cassandra, now Lee from Congo and stuff like that. So I knew Lyle, missionary Lyle, and honestly didn't even know you guys had started a church until I moved here, and our mutual friend Will was like, you got to come to Legacy. Lyle's pastoring the church. And I was like,
you said that kid?
No way. That missionary Lyle, India Lyle.
Yep.
Yeah. And I came and he's a phenomenal preacher.
Yeah.
You could tell that the church is growing, has continued to grow. It's really amazing to see what the Lord's done out of y'all's just yes. Yeah. And I think that's some of the fun is the fruit of a yes, even when you think it's going to be one thing, but it turns into 100%. Another.
But that's when it gets fun.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the fun. That's the fun when you just give your blank yes to the Lord, and then he brings you along the journey, and you just keep saying yes to whatever he puts in front of you. And usually it's people. Yeah. Usually it's not a big, flashy, fancy opportunity. Yeah. Sometimes it is, but it always for us has included in our yes an opportunity to serve people. Yeah. And that's where we find the most fulfillment, whether that's, on the mission field or in a local church setting. And that's where we are right now today. Yeah. And we love it. And we love partnering with missions and ministries outside of the local church to get the reach of the gospel places that we would never go with our own
going
2 feet.
Into the prisons now and other things you guys are doing.
Yeah. So important.
Yeah, that's amazing. You said something too that I think is really cool, and then I want to ask you a few more questions, but you said it was about people, and I think sometimes now we can make it more about whatever ministry we want to be tied to or connected to, or the logo or the name. And being a spiritual son and daughter of Heidi, it probably was difficult to go, we're Iris, and yet God's calling us to do this other thing, and that's a hard yes that is costly, and you have to wrestle those things out.
For sure.
How did that transition go for you guys and for the people y'all were with? Was it smooth, or was it pretty pretty difficult.
Yeah, I think when you have a leader as open-handed as Heidi, it's really hard for it to go rocky unless you just want to make it rocky.
For sure, yeah. How hard do you want this to be?
Yeah, like she's probably one of the most generous, open-handed leaders, and she really like encouraged us. She recognized what America needed from us in that season.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Was a local church. Yeah. So she was so for it, and we told her, hey, Iris isn't planting local churches in America. Right. And we actually have to go on the journey of discovering what that looks like, because we don't come from, like a church planting organization. Right. We come from a missions background. We raise every dollar.
Totally.
We didn't start with a big infusion of cash.
Yeah, shoestring budget.
Yes, we just started with the right heart. And so we had to go on that journey, and we asked permission, like, hey, is it okay if we move away from the name Iris so that we can explore what it looks like to plant a church in America? And she just so encouraged it and was like, I'm so for you. And so, I think you could make it hard by not being honest and not being transparent about what the Lord's doing, or even, and we also really approached it from the standpoint of like, hey, as somebody who's a leader in our life, do you think this is a good idea?
Sure.
Like, we're not just striking out on our own here. Like, this is what we really feel from the Lord, but hey, weigh in, tell us what you think. And so her support meant everything. But I think it's really hard to make it hard with Heidi.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
She's like so open-handed.
Yeah, she's like, do the thing God's called you to do.
Exactly. She's like, please share the gospel. Yeah.
I was talking to her about something about a year ago now, and I was like, what do you think about? She's like, if that's what God said to do, do it. I'm like,
so grateful for spiritual parents like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Why Legacy?
Well, we didn't even choose the name. That's what's hilarious.
I didn't know that.
So this is actually the funny part of the story. So Lyle's dad was a pastor for years and years and years in a city about 2 hours north of Nashville in Kentucky. And at the time, he was kind of going through a season where he wanted to rename his church something that felt more authentic to where they were in that season. And we were planting at the same time, and Lyle just felt this conviction like, hey, you can't do this thing alone. So how about you go and ask your dad if he will, go in with you on this process. Yeah. And so his dad was actually who named the church.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Wow.
Which is very sweet. We didn't even want to call it Legacy because our old building, like our office building, is right next to a funeral home.
Yeah.
And so we just thought that everybody would think that it was a funeral.
Yeah.
Legacy. We're like, sounds like a place where, people
you
go to
your
celebrate.
legacy.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
But there is so much just yes from like heaven on it that we were like, all right, this isn't what we would choose.
Wow.
But this is what God chooses. And that's it. That's how Legacy. Like we probably came up with 100 different names and our original mission statement was to grow the family of God, because we just had this passion for, and we still do, for a church that feels like a home, a church that feels like a family. And so that was all. His dad was the originator of that. And we always say like legacy is not something that you just like make up. It's something that you receive. And so that's been our story, even from like the naming of our church. But isn't that hilarious? We didn't even name it.
That's wild. I didn't know that. That's so cool. Oh, and his church is still going well in Kentucky, right?
It's on it. Yeah. He retired a couple of years ago, and so their church isn't functioning in the same capacity any longer. But they come down to Legacy.
I would say, I feel like they're around.
Now we've convinced them. We're like, now that you're retired, just come down
on here. Yeah, exactly. Come be part of the family.
Exactly. So they love it. That's like,
that's
and that's
awesome.
such a joy, because now they have something to be a part of.
Yeah.
On the other side of that season of their life.
You've got your family and his family both pretty involved.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Special.
Okay, so that was how many years ago?
Oh my goodness, that was probably 9 years ago when we really determined that.
Okay.
And then we had to prep the church because it was really functioning as a church, even as Iris. So we prepped them for about 6 months for the change to happen, because it's a jarring thing, to go from assuming this is like a glory missions base to, hey, now this is a local church, and there's different expectations for your, life in a local church versus something like a ministry or an experience outside of that.
Parachurch ministry, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's totally
so
different.
it just took time for people. A lot of people transitioned. A lot of people left because they weren't ready to make that commitment.
Yeah.
But we gave people time. So we've been doing, Legacy, we planted Legacy 8 years ago. It'll be 9 years in the fall.
Okay. I'm a nerd about practical things. Can I ask you a couple of questions?
100%.
Were y'all meeting weekly? What were y'all doing in those early days?
We were baptizing. We were
You were doing everything
communion.
like church?
Yeah, we were doing everything as a church.
Okay.
But people felt really comfortable. Nashville is a complicated church zone. Most people don't recognize this about Nashville because they see it as the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, being a part of the buckle of the Bible Belt means that there's a lot of baggage for people that comes alongside church.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. But some of it is just because people have been misformed.
Right.
So they have an expectation of church that church can never be for them.
Yeah.
And then two, they don't receive essentially like a harvest because they never sow seed in the field of the church that
Consumer
they're planted.
mentality.
100%.
Right.
So it's like consume, but that's just not how church works. It's
Right.
always a sowing and reaping thing
Yeah.
in regards to church. So there's a lot of baggage for people. So the moment we said, hey, even if we're functioning the exact same, we didn't move facilities, we didn't move, hey, like
We're
we're a church. People said, oh, that word that I have a problem with that. That's just not what I want to be a part of. And so that was shocking for us because both Lyle and I have great experiences with church.
Right.
And we were young and we had no clue that people had all this baggage with church.
Yeah. What's wrong with church?
Yeah, we're like,
church is great.
You know? But we were also so young.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have followed me either. I would have said, I'm going to go find a church. Or people already were committed to churches. And they're like, I'm going to go all in with my church. It created a sense of, like, hey, you're putting a stake in the ground.
Yeah, you got to
choose here or go where the Lord's calling you.
Right.
But that was such an interesting season. So we never expected that.
Yeah. People don't talk about it a lot in the Nashville area, but it's definitely been one of my experiences is that there's such an abundance of choices. And honestly, they're great. Like there's so many great ministries. So many great churches. So many great, like I remember when I first came, people were like, here's 8 phenomenal
like spirit-filled churches that preach the Bible for real, that do community
100%.
for real.
Leaders are great, not hypocrites.
Yep.
Yeah, like here's all the things, And I'm like, wow, like there's that many churches, that you can come to. And so one of the things I've noticed too is though, like everybody wants to be involved with everything.
Yeah.
And so it is hard typically when somebody's like, oh, no, we're a church. Like it kind of draws a line in the sand. Like you're either going to come be a part of this family or you're not. And I think sometimes too, one of the issues, which you may not want to say this as a pastor, but not being a pastor, I can say it. I think one of the problems with that is that people are so easy to just leave because I can just go try somewhere else.
100%.
And you're like, that's not a great way to posture yourself with family, with church. You know, like commit and plug in and get a part and take the good, bad, ugly because it's going to be crazy and fun and beautiful and. So that's crazy. So I can imagine in those early days, some people were like, I love being a part of this.
100%.
Until it's going to require some commitment.
Yeah, they're like, I don't want to call you my pastor. You're literally 5-10 years younger than me. And honestly, like we understood.
Sure.
One of the best things about planting a church in Nashville is also one of the hardest things about planting a church in Nashville. And it's exactly what you said. It's that there's 100 other great churches in Nashville. Yeah. So what it did for us is that it forced us to find out who we really were before the Lord, not who we were trying to be or pretended to be.
That's
like,
so good.
Who has God really called us to be? Because that's the only thing that's going to thrive here.
Wow.
So Lord, if you've called us to plant a church, then we're going to do it the way you've asked us to do this. Wow. And so we stopped feeling like, oh, we're not even competing with anything or anybody else. We're just this family in the same way. Like I'm a big, encourager of the fact that Nashville needs more churches.
Yeah.
I think every city needs far more churches than they have.
We're not.
And I want, exactly. Right. I'm like, I need your support in the city now. Yeah. But when we first started, we were just floundering, trying to find our way. Like, hey, how do we actually build something that ministers to people, but is through the heartbeat that the Lord's given us, which is unique. We have a unique heartbeat. Yeah. But it took time for us to figure that out and find that, and it could be able to express that through our church family. And so that's like, it's one of the hardest things about being in Nashville is that you can just leave and go to another great church.
Right. Spirit-filled, Bible-based.
But I'm like, it's also a great thing.
Yeah.
Because it forces me to really pray as a leader.
Yeah.
Because if I'm in a city where I can just like do worship, preaching, baptisms, you know, receive communion, minister to kids, but there's no like, you know, God leadership on it, because I'm not really forced to pray as much as I really should about this, because everybody's going to come here.
Yeah.
There's nothing else available.
Right.
I'm grateful to be in a city where I had to learn how to pray in order to plant a church. And it's not that church planters don't pray in any city that they're in. That would be a wild assumption. But just Nashville's so unique. It's like
it is.
It's like being in Dallas with a billion great churches.
Right.
It forces you to say, "Hey, who am I before the Lord?"
Yeah,
because I can't pretend to be anybody else. They're already taken.
Well, I think the timing of the Lord, I mean, we could talk about this. I've got to pay attention to time, because I could talk to you about this for hours and pick your brain, maybe at coffee one day. But the timing of the Lord for you and Lyle in this church is amazing, because Nashville is becoming a Christian, people say Mecca, hub, whatever it is. You see the Lord, and there are great new church plants all the time.
Yes.
You guys kind of launched Legacy before that big boom occurred.
Praise God.
Yeah, 100%. I'm like, wow, like it was, the timing of the Lord was such a beautiful moment. Like, y'all have miraculous stories of getting the buildings that you've gotten. And so when was because, so we have Julia in here, my spiritual daughter. Julia comes from Brazil.
Yes, we love Brazil.
We love Brazil. She's used to like 30,000 person church, like wild, And so the first time I started taking with her to itinerant, we would go to these churches that are a couple hundred people. And she's like, what's wrong with these churches?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here? And she's learning the culture.
Yep.
But you guys, we've kind of watched, even just in the last 3 years since I've been around here. I mean, now you're packed out. Like, you're bursting at the seams of your church. Like, when was really this tipping point? Because you're actually still a young church.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
the mercy of the Lord that we planted the church before the big Nashville boom.
Right.
It was starting to happen.
Yeah.
But like Lyle and I were young leaders. We would have gotten eaten for lunch.
Yeah.
It was just the mercy of the Lord. It was the mercy of the Lord. There's something about Lyle and I, though. We've got so much grit.
I was going to say, that was literally the word I was going to use.
Grit. Keep going. Yeah. Like, if God said it, we're going to be a part of it, Yeah. But yeah, I think the tipping point really came post-COVID, because COVID really helped us, as it did every church, define who we were.
Yeah.
Because I think people, for the first time, especially in the buckle of the Bible Belt, gave themselves permission to not go to church as like punching a time clock.
Yeah.
So anybody who didn't actually want to be a part of church, like it was just a formality or something that they did because their parents did it, but not because their faith belonged to them, they had a chance to check out from church.
And no judgment.
Yeah.
You just stay home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody judged it. You watch online.
Yeah.
And so we were so, such a tight-knit community at that point. It actually gave us so much opportunity to turn the ship without anybody falling off the sides.
That's amazing.
Had we been bigger, I think it would have been different. Like, there would have been people that had to like bail out because we needed to make such a big turn.
Yeah.
And so I think it was after that when people kind of sense like, oh, like they're coming into their leadership. They've made it through COVID.
Yeah.
As a
they're
leader,
still here.
if you like made it through COVID, they're like, all right,
That's
you're
so
like
true.
legit. Yeah,
you got
made
some
it,
battle
you did
scars.
it.
You're good. Yeah.
And so I think that was kind of the tipping point for us. We really have such a heart for like prayer and worship, and our prayer and worship really became like an identity factor for our church community that I think really helped keep us unified around each other, but also just the presence of God.
Yeah.
And so I think it really helped us navigate those waters. And then after that, when people were realizing like, oh, I want my faith to be my own.
Yeah.
That COVID was the best thing for that.
Yeah.
It forced people to really assess, hey, what's their relationship with God really look like?
Wow.
And so when people came back, they were really back. There wasn't any, it's very rare in our church. And I'm not saying in churches in general, but in our church at Legacy, for somebody to come in a nominal Christian.
Yeah.
Because this is a part of our identity as a church, and it was hard for us to embrace this. Is like, it's not easy for people like that to be a part of Legacy.
Yeah.
And we recognize that. I want to minister to those people, but they might not always have the easiest time but what's beautiful is if they come, they usually get set on fire. And then they're like, wait a second, I actually really want to live my faith out loud. And so I think that was an important time for us to just embrace that, like, calling that the Lord's put on our lives.
You're going to come in and you're either going to get uncomfortable and leave, or you're going to get uncomfortable and go deeper.
100%.
Right? Yeah, 100%.
I'm like, I love that about church.
I do too. I love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, your story, it's really, you got to write a book sometime, because it's nice. Pretty inspiring if you think about just logistically and practically. You're newly-ish married. Less than 10 years.
Yep.
You're planting a church as a young 20-something. Lyle at this point is probably a young 30-something.
Yep.
COVID happens, like, pretty newly into the church, and you come out of that, and now you're pastoring I would consider a thriving, growing church. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I mean, we all knew seasoned leaders,
right?
Who, you know,
it was a struggle.
Yeah,
there was something about the youth of it that was beneficial for us.
That's amazing.
Because we didn't know any better.
Yeah.
If I ever write a book, you can and quote this. The book will be called The Power of Average, because that is how I see my life. I'm just the average girl. I'm like the opposite of, hey, I thought I was going to do something big with my life, but that's what the Lord loves using, just simple yeses. And honestly, like, that is what the story of our church and our ministry has been, is just two average leaders.
Yeah.
That really believe that Jesus can do what he says he's going to do. And I trust that he says he's the cornerstone. He's the foundation of the church. So my job is to just respond when he says it's time to build and it's time to move. Yeah. And you don't have to be like the shiniest, most seasoned leader to do that. Yeah. But Lyle and I always say it, you have to be dependent upon God.
Come on.
You cannot do it. I mean, you can do it not dependent upon God with the right leadership tools. Right. And I want both, because man, we've hurt people in the process of not being strong leaders. And I think that's unacceptable as you mature on in your leadership and the Lord gives you a bigger metron. Yeah. I'm like, at some point you got to apologize for the things that you really you didn't know. I can't say I don't know the same things I did when I was 23.
Right. No, that's true.
Now I'm 35. There's a different measure of accountability.
Sure.
However, the only way we got here was just little yeses.
Yeah. Come on. I love it. Sometimes about young leaders, I say you're just too ignorant to know that you could quit. And sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah. Praise God for that.
You just
literally.
Don't know. 100%.
And I won't be the one to tell you.
Yeah. 100%. No. We've all done it. Suffer through. You can do it. Yeah. This is normal. This is fine.
Yeah, totally. This is the part where everybody else quits. You're just you're like coming against the wall, but you can do it.
Yeah, I worked for a church planter for several years, Michael Berder, and
who's one of my favorites.
Oh my gosh! Like I always say, him being him caused me to fall in love with the church.
Same.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And then he is contagiously loves the bride, believes in the bride, all of her facets, all of her forms. I could brag about Michael, but I won't. But he's just he healed my heart in so many ways of like just because he loved the church. But he's definitely one of those people that you hear his story and it's like, you should have quit about 30 years ago, 40
100%.
years ago, like, dear God, like the amount of things that have happened to you. And yet you've come out of that and you still love the church.
Yes.
And you still believe in the church. And that was one of the things that he told me all the time. He was like, man, church planting is absolutely the hardest job, but we don't tell people that.
No, we don't.
He's like,
because we need more of them.
Just let them go. Yes. You know? Yeah. And I think that's the beautiful thing about your love story, so right? Is like, man, you gave a yes and you ran with it and you didn't quit. I love it.
Didn't quit. Heidi always says, if you don't quit,
you win. Exactly. And there's truth to that.
True.
You know, it's like, hey, we might take some scars, we might take some battle wounds, but we're still standing.
Yes.
You know, and that is the faithfulness of Jesus. But okay, one other thing I want to talk to you about. I know we're getting late on time, but I could ask you so many more questions because I love it.
We'll do a part two.
We'll do a part two. We both live here. We've got time.
Yeah, it's easy peasy.
Yeah, we'll make you 4 kids. They'll be fine.
They'll be here. They'll just hang out.
We'll just have them running around, Well, I'll hold one. You can hold one.
Yeah, they'll contribute.
Exactly. You launched Legacy Girls.
Yes.
Which I just got super excited about because you launched that I want to say, I don't think my book had released yet, but I was writing When Women Support Women. And I am not a women's ministry gal. Like, I don't have the personality type for it. I'm a
Yes.
And then you launched this thing, and I was super excited about it. I was interested to see what it was going to be like. One of my girls who I adore was helping Reese, now Garmony, married. And I know, just the sweetest couple. Like, love them. She was helping with it, and so she was giving me updates, and I was so excited. And I go, and girl, I was blown away.
Yeah.
I mean, the sanctuary was packed.
Yeah.
First meeting.
Yeah.
Like, first thing y'all had done, right? It was the first thing. And I was like, I have to go. Like, I think we rearranged my schedule so that I could be there. I was like, I want to be at that. I want to go see what they're doing. And the presence of God, the hunger in the room, the testimonies I was hearing afterwards, like just all of it. I was like, there's some sauce the young people say 100%. On this. Like, the wind of God is on this.
Absolutely.
So tell me about that.
Yeah.
Were you planning? Were you wanting? Where'd that come from?
It's a really good question. It definitely, I'm with you. I'm not a big women's ministry kind of person. It's not that I don't enjoy being with women, ministering.
Yeah, of course.
I love it. So much fun. I just hadn't seen it done in a way that felt inspiring to me.
Yes,
I just hadn't seen it done. I was like, it's
100%.
just, I don't know. It feels like there's so much more in us than some of what I had been a part of.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of like being a young leader like we are, where I'm recognizing now, like the Lord always reminds me, hey, if you don't see it, just build it. Like, if it's in you, like, just build it.
That is a pioneer, right there.
Yeah, 100%. I never thought I was, but it's just like, just build it. If it's not, if you have it in your heart and it's not felt satisfying to you, hey, go build it so that maybe there's somebody else who has that same experience.
Wow.
And so Legacy Girls was birthed for me out of a season of just intense pain and anxiety. I had never, in 2023, I went through, my husband's family went through a lot of just loss and just tension in their family. And it was like, as if I carried him through 2023, and then the top of 2024, it was like my season. It's like just an ordained season where the Lord was like, hey, we're going to take you through some like real healing.
Wow.
And I fell in love with the Bible in 2024. I've always loved the Word of God. It's what's kept me in so many seasons. But I'd always had a very life-giving relationship with God, where we would speak to one another. Prayer time felt really vibrant. I would go to sleep at night. I would have prophetic dreams or senses from the Lord. And it was as if he just went quiet in 2024. And it was just me. It was like it felt like my heart was in a dark room, and it was just me and my Bible. And that was the word of the Lord for my life.
Wow.
And the Lord spoke to me, and he said, the very beginning of 2024, hey, this is a well digging season. And if you'll dig a well in this season, it will be a well of refreshing for others in a season to come.
Wow.
And so I just went straight into the word of the Lord, and I just prayed, and I read my Bible just book by book. That's all I could do. I didn't even pray and sense from the Lord, like, let's open to the Psalms and do it was just Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And, I just read through the Bible.
Wow.
And it was in that season, the Lord just birthed in me a passion to see people, especially women, because it was like the Lord highlighted the heart of women, especially in Nashville, where he's like, there's so many that are in this place where they don't feel like they can hear me. They don't feel like they can know me any deeper than they do. And it's like their mindsets are blocking them from having a more vibrant experience with the Lord. It's like some of it is spiritual, so like they need a breakthrough.
Yeah.
But some of it is practical because nobody's ever taught them how to do this.
Wow.
So he was like, well, you build Legacy Girls. And I said, sure, I'll build Legacy Girls. I'd had it kind of in the back of my head and my heart for years. I thought it would be called something different at other seasons, and it just felt like this was the right timing.
Yeah.
And so we launched with a Bible study because I felt like it was the best way to honor the season that the Lord had brought me through. So all of us read the book of Romans together, and then we said, okay, let's get together and let's worship. And I thought my goal was to see, a couple hundred girls come together and worship and get ministered to. Really, my big goal was like, I want to pray for people, and I want people to have a reigniting of their faith at the altar. That's what I felt and what I saw. And so, we did that. And lots of girlies came out and the room was full, and the presence of God was so evident in the room. And so, yeah, I mean, the Lord's doing something really special with women across the globe. I think that's like very real. You know, it's like, hey, I'm going to pour out my spirit on all flesh in the latter days. So I know that's so uncomfortable for people, even women in ministry, and it's hard to explain it. But it's like, hey, this is that. This is that where all flesh get the presence of God, and everybody gets an outpouring, and everybody's going to be outpouring. We're all doing it together. This is just that season. It's hard to explain it. It's hard to, you know, put your finger on what God is doing exactly, but I just see it across kind of like so many different churches, so many different nations. So I'm like, okay, Lord, bring it on. We love Legacy Girls, and we're going to build more. I literally was pregnant, didn't know it when we did this first event. And so I've just been in my, you know, dark cave of first and second trimester, but
growing a baby.
Growing a human. But I'm hoping to do something more in the fall time.
I love it.
Or even in the early part of next year, because I just think it's like the Lord just set some women on fire.
Yeah. We've seen this like across the board. Like when the Lord asked me, when I moved here, we started kind of a women's ministry for discipling young women, you know? And so we're discipling all these young women, and God's just constantly talking about women. And I'm like, no, talk about the nations. Like, you know, anything else, you know? And it's crazy, because then all of these people I started talking to, like, the Lord told me to birth a new women's ministry. The Lord told me to do this. The Lord told me to write a book for women, all of these things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like the Lord is doing something on women right now in the season. And I just sat there in that room feeling the pleasure of the Lord on that yes. And the reality of the women. You did this amazing thing at the end where you had women come and lay something down at the altar. And you just watch hundreds of women tear-stricken, encountering God, laying down these things at the altar and seeing God move. And I do think this is something for Nashville in this next season of what God's doing with women. And so I love it. I'm looking forward to it. And I think one of my favorite things, I'm single, not married, don't have kids. So it's one thing to do ministry like that, you know, where honestly you have all the time in the world, like truthfully, right? Versus you're married, you got kiddos, you're birthing another one. Yeah. You got puppy.
Yeah.
You got puppy. You're planting another church.
Yep.
And God asked you to do this other thing. And I think that's something to me that's so valuable and important that I can't express or minister to because I'm not in that season of life. But it's like, hey, no matter what your season is, you can give this yes.
100%.
And no matter how busy you might think you are,
100%.
You can give this yes. And I know you did it with a team. I'm sure you didn't do it alone.
I had a great team.
Exactly. But you gave the yes anyway.
I think that's so important to really like emphasize from both of our lives, is just this reality that there's no excuse. To say, I'm too overwhelmed to give my yes. It's like, you're too overwhelmed not to give your yes. Like you have to give your yes to the Lord because that's where the grace is.
Come on.
That's the grace is in the yes that he invites you into, because we can spin our wheels building 100 different things or nothing at all. And there's no grace for it because he's not invited you into it. And as long as he's inviting you in,
come on,
then there's grace to build it. And that's what I'm like, okay, Lord, there's grace for this, despite all of the busy season. You know, like I probably am one of those people that don't assume that I'm super busy. I just like look at everybody else's life. I'm like, we're all working really hard with the same amount of hours, you know? And there are some things that I'm not expected to do because of the season of life that I'm in. But it's all about, hey, there's grace in the yes. And as long as he's inviting you into it, then there's probably going to be a grace to do it.
Yeah, come on. You're modeling that super well. I love it. When Reese came and was like, I have this opportunity to run with Allyson, I'm like, go run, like learn. She's doing all of this stuff. And that's her next season, right? Exactly. I'm like, she's married. She's got kids. She's doing ministry. Like, learn how to do that. And I think it does exactly what you said. Like, it takes away any of our excuses. Like, just say yes to the thing that God's telling you to do. And you and Lau both are modeling that really well. We have to wrap up, but I just want to say this. Like, I love you and Lau. We are so grateful for our church, for what you guys have built, for your yes. Man, I'm so grateful that we get to be a part of that body, and that just seeing something that warms my heart is it's just such a diverse group of people when we get in there. From age, from race, from background, from everything. I'm like, I walk in there and I'm like, this is what heaven's going to feel 100%. Like. And you guys have just, in obedience to the Lord, built something so beautiful. And I'm so grateful. I can't wait to see what the next season looks like. It's so much fun. So we love you. Thank you so much for coming and doing this.
My honor.
We'll let you get back to your babies.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for having me. It's so special.
Absolutely.
I so enjoy any conversation with you. I think that you are like a fire carrier, and anybody who gets around you is going to catch on fire.
That's what we do, right? That's what we're all doing.
That's right.
Lighting people on fire. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us at the table with Jess. We had so much fun with Allyson today. You can keep checking back weekly. We're going to have incredible interviews with just people who inspire me to burn brighter with love for Jesus, chasing after, just like Allyson spoke of, that just unexcusable, just giving that yes to God. And so you can subscribe, and check back next week for more interviews coming. We love you guys.